All right, Kuala Lumpur is ranked 18th globally in the Global Startup Ecosystem Report GSER 2025's Top 20 Emerging Startup Ecosystems. And this is the first time Malaysia has entered the top 20, making it one of the fastest risers globally and second in Southeast Asia, just behind Jakarta. And the GSER by Startup Genome is the world's most authoritative analysis of over 290 innovation ecosystems worldwide, using 5 core success factors, which is performance, funding, market reach, talent and experience, and knowledge. So to discuss further, we're joined by Norman and Matthieu Vanhaecke, the Group CEO of Cradle Fund. Thank you so much for joining me this morning. First of all, congratulations.
Thank you.
On making it the top 20 for the GSER report. But if you could share with us, Norman, what does this milestone mean for Malaysia, not just for the ranking, but the whole ecosystem of startups in Malaysia?
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me today. I think this news is actually something that we've been eagerly awaiting ever since 2021, when we first launched our Malaysia Startup Ecosystem Roadmap, which is a 10-year roadmap to place ourselves into the top 20 of the global ranking. So right now we are in the top 20 of the emerging ranking. So we still have a bit of a work to do to get into the top, which is like the Premier League, if you say, of the startup ecosystem. But having said that, it is a very encouraging move. But not only that, a lot of things actually, a lot of very interesting things actually happened in the past year, in 2024. Not just KL, but also other Asian ecosystems as well. Singapore, you see, Korea, Seoul, Bengaluru, Hong Kong, and Chinese cities all rising up. Which is very, very encouraging. A lot of attention into this region, actually, on the global perspective.
I mean, this is not an overnight success. It's often the result of years of strategic effort. But what were some of the key initiatives or turning points that has helped us reach this level?
So if you look at the report itself, you compare between the previous years and this year, the stark difference will be in that market reach category. So what does market reach means? So market reach is about how our startups can immerse themselves into not just the local market, but also beyond as well. So I think, but of course, when Startup Genome looks into emerging ecosystems, the calculations are slightly different compared to global ecosystems. So just to make it a bit more apple to apple. But having said that, as an emerging ecosystem, we are actually one of the top in terms of market reach, or the capability of our startups to enter into different markets. If I could say, being a 10 out of 10 is kind of like the maximum score that we can get, actually. I think that's very commendable.
And let's drill more into the GSER report itself. Where exactly did Kuala Lumpur perform best, and what does that tell towards our competitive edge as a whole?
Yeah. I think historically, in terms of our performance as an ecosystem in the emerging category has been quite strong. Ever since 2021, when we first started to track, we've been consistently in the 21st to 30th band. But bearing in mind that the emerging ecosystem ranks 100 top emerging ecosystems. So that also includes Taipei, also Lisbon, and other international cities as well. So it is no mean feat for us to actually be able to consistently be at the top end of the emerging ecosystem ranking. And having broken through into the top 20 is very significant. So when we look at our the categories, right? So performance has always been strong. Funding-wise, especially at the early stage, has been strong. Our talent, and experience of our startup founders have been strong. And it's the first time that our market reach has actually gone up by leaps and bounds. But we still have that challenge in terms of the knowledge category. So knowledge here means the complexity of the patents that we produce and bring into the market. I think that's a bit of a challenge, not just for Malaysia, but for other ASEAN ecosystems as well. So this includes even Singapore as well, if you look at the global ranking. So there are certain areas that we are going to focus into. But what we have right now, which has led to where we are today, we will continue to strengthen. But I think moving forward, we will focus more on how do we actually bring out our research, our technology that we develop in our academia side out into the market and into the world.
Having that said, with all the figures that you mentioned, that not all numbers were rosy, and having reached another milestone, that's a great significant milestone. But the GSER noted that KL's ecosystem value dropped from $47 billion to 4.8 billion. So how how should that worry us?
Well, I mean, to give a bit of a context, we had a bit of a over-inflationary effect post-pandemic. So in 2021, if we look into the report, actually, in terms of valuation as an ecosystem, globally, 1.7 trillion in 2021, collectively as a global. But in 2024, it actually gone down 6 times lower. It is now $267 billion. So we're not the only one who's affected. Everyone is affected. So, I mean, that brings its own challenges as well when some companies may have been overinflated during those years. It's a bit tough for us to find exits typically, to raise exits, to, I mean, in a sense, recycle back the capital into the ecosystem. So that's actually one of the other key challenges that we're trying to face as well, that we're going to focus on going forward.
You mentioned about capital. Let's talk capital, where it's actually often the lifeblood for any startup scene. But what's the outlook on funding now, in your opinion, and particularly for early startup stage?
Well, if you just focus on the early stage startups, actually between previous year and this year's report, actually we've gone up.
Okay.
So previously the reports mentioned $255 million available for a 2.5-year period. So that period has now moved into 2024, where it's now $368 million for a 2.5-year period within the Kuala Lumpur ecosystem. But of course, the country at large is actually even more, because that is just counting KL and the greater areas. So if we look at early stage, support from the government, I think, is still remains strong. Our grants have actually gone out to more recipients now. If you remember KL20 event last year, where a lot of new VC venture capital initiatives were announced, right? So Jelawang Capital has just recently announced the fund managers, Dana Printers from Co-op, Blue Chip Ventures. All those actually play in driving funding into the ecosystem. But having said that, I think there's a lot of interest out there as well to come into the region via Malaysia. I think that's a very interesting thing. If I can add on a little bit more.
We got time.
Yeah. So one of the things that we are trying to actually lift up our position as an ecosystem is actually that we are this year actually leading the ASEAN Startup Initiative. So to be there in the global space, we need to position Malaysia as a hub. So hence why we need to create the attraction. What we did and what has happened in KL20 last year, a lot of initiatives meant to drive attention into the ecosystem, into Malaysia. So it's a lot of that that are starting to come in, a lot of interest. But having said that, another part that we are looking at is how do we then ensure that all the attention really comes into Malaysia and stays in Malaysia. Yeah. We're looking into, hence why we are collaborating a lot in trying to unearth our innovative potential within the patents and the technologies that's developed within the universities. There's a lot there actually. It's a treasure trove of technologies.
But this news is a new momentum for us, for the whole ecosystem of startups, and momentum is great, but sustaining is the real test. So how do we actually to maintain moving forward with this, by building this momentum, and what challenges could actually, be the real test for this?
Typically, when it comes to the startup ecosystem itself, right, the biggest challenge is that it's a very high risk in nature. So there's a lot of apprehension, especially the way we were brought up. We are a bit more risk averse. But having said that, that mindset has been changing over the years. So there's more and more risk taking. Of course, it was catalyzed by the government by de-risking, especially in the early stage. So hence why we provided grants, a lot of support at the very early stage. And then going forward into the later stages, that's where the private funding will start to take over. But having said that, it is really encouraging as well to see a lot of private investments also happening at the early stage. We have our angel networks, the Malaysia Business Angel Networks, established in 2015 and also gaining momentum. They've already opened up chapters in other states in Malaysia, Penang, Sarawak, and a few others that are coming. We have our ECF, equity crowdfunding, we have a P2P. So there's actually a lot of support or options available actually. And we're actually looking into other types of early stage funding as well. It is critical to build that early critical mass so that, you know, all that flows into the later stages. Yeah.
We have about 2 minutes left. Perhaps you could say something to the audience, perhaps the founders, aspiring entrepreneurs and also investors. What message could you convey to them?
Well, my message to everybody is, well, take this as a motivation for us to work as an ecosystem, not just for KL, but I think for the whole country as well. There's a lot of interest right now. There's a lot of support that's coming, even at the city level. So we are very, very encouraged by that. And so we would really love for everybody to come together. Let's come together as a country. Let's push ourselves. Let's take that risk. Don't just, you know, be good where we are here. There's a lot of opportunities out there. And we here at Cradle are really looking forward to being able to open the doors, facilitate your entrance into new markets, new areas, new technologies, in order to propel ourselves to our ultimate vision to be ultimately top global startup ecosystem by 2030.
All right, there was Matthieu Vanhaecke, the Group CEO of Cradle Fund, and we hope to actually empower these startups more to actually reach the Premier League I mentioned earlier.
Yes.
So thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me this morning on Yagawani, and you can find the whole discussion on all of our social media platforms, and that includes astroawani.com.